Dragons. Almost all cultures and civilizations have had myths about scaly, large lizards or serpentine beasts. Dragons and dragon-like creatures are extremely common, and they can have had many possible origins. And this video will go through some of these possible origins. Starting with the fossils of extinct animals being mistaken for the bones of great dragons. Primarily dinosaur fossils, but you could imagine giant sea reptiles and other extinct animals also being misinterpreted as being dragons. Imagine back in the past, before we knew about prehistoric life, and you encountered a fossil, like the fossilized skull of, for example, an Allosaurus, Dilophosaurus, or a Spinosaurus. Do these not look rather dragon-like? And also other big meat-eating theropod dinosaurs. They all look a bit dragon-like. And so do a lot of plant-eating ornithopods as well, like the Stegosaurus. And the huge sauropods are also big enough to easily have been mistaken for dragons, with the size of their fossilized bones. And likewise, ancient extinct crocodilians and sea reptiles and even some whales might have been misinterpreted as being dragons too. Sure, these are reconstructed, but with the shape of the bones and the size of the bones like these, it is not that far-fetched to believe in dragons if you saw these bones in the ground, in the rock. And with the fossils being melded with the rock, since the fossils are rock too, the fossils almost look magical. And the fact that there exist myths about dragons turning into rock, or their bones being rock, or being the foundations of the earth, such as with the myths surrounding the dragon goddess Tiamat from Mesopotamian mythology. This might be an explanation for those myths, as fossils, which are bones turned into rock, are a possible explanation for these myths, and the myths of dragons generally, as fossils were misidentified and misinterpreted as being the bones of dragons. But it is not only fossils which have been the inspirations for dragons probably, but also still living beasts of nature, animals in nature. For example, dragons in Persian mythology are often depicted as snake-like or eel-like, and the old Persian word for dragon used in the Avesta, in which dragons first appeared in Persian mythology, was the same word as used for snake, and is also related to other Indo-European words for eel. And Persian dragons are often related to the sea or rivers, so they have a great connection to water. Similarly, the Mesopotamian dragon goddess of Tiamat was also a sea goddess. And in Arabic folklore, dragons are also associated with water, as they are said to greedily occupy water sources and guard them from anyone that would wish to drink from them, or use the water for irrigation. So this is a common element in Middle Eastern mythology and folklore about dragons. And the Arabic word for dragon, tanin, is actually the word for crocodile in Hebrew, a closely related language. Crocodiles and water-living snakes and eels could have been the inspiration for a lot of dragon myths about dragons being close to water, guarding the water against those that would approach the water. But it is not only Middle Eastern dragons that are associated with water, but also Asiatic dragons, coming from Chinese myths, relate dragons to carp fish and rivers, with carps turning into dragons once they reach the end of the river, upstream. Which is why in Pokemon, Magikarp turns into Gyarados. And carp fish in Asia can actually become pretty impressive, as you have various species of giant carp. And also related to giant carp are also giant catfish, like the Mekong giant catfish, Pangasianodon gigas, that might have inspired dragon myths. And I mentioned crocodilians before. Those exist also in China. You have, for example, the Chinese alligator and the now extinct Han Yuasukus, that at least lived during the Bronze Age and might even have lived into the late medieval period in China. So crocodilians might have been behind the myths about Chinese dragons too. And the cat-like features of Chinese dragons and some Middle Eastern dragons are probably also inspired by big cats, like lions and tigers. And you also have giant snakes and venomous snakes too. And in many myths in the Nordic countries, dragons are often referred to as snakes and serpents, and are venomous too. You can see this also in the Beowulf poem, where Beowulf faces off against a venomous dragon. And often a lot of dragons are called Orm, snake or serpent, in the old sagas and in older Nordic myths. And in the case of the New World and myths about dragon-like creatures there, you have giant snakes like anacondas, and you have the Quetzalcoatl, who is also feathered, which also can connect dragons to birds of prey. So fear and awe of animals such as big predatory birds, big cats, large snakes, and lizards such as Komodo dragons, and crocodiles being threatening and awe-inspiring probably also inspired myths about dragons, as the threat potential of these animals manifested in the human psyche as a dragon. And speaking about threats, so is fire and venom, which are often things spit by dragons or found in their bites or stings, if they have scorpion-like stingers on their tails. The fear for these things is fear that was formed by our imagination into dragons. Dragons represents nature at its most predatory, dangerous, and awe-inspiring. And just like gods are associated with nature, so are dragons. In fact, you have gods associated with dragons, such as the previously mentioned Tiamat and Quetzalcoatlus. And in China, dragons are pretty much minor gods and connected with rivers and life, with nature giving life too. But dragons are also connected with evil nature and demons as well, with, for example, Satan sometimes being referred to as a serpentine dragon. And in Western myths, dragons are associated with greed, with their gold hoarding, and with wrath represented in fire. And dragons are a symbol of nature, a symbol of humanity's evil nature, in the form of a reptilian, cold-blooded monster that breathes fire. Similarly, in Persian mythology, in the Avesta, which is an holy scripture from the ancient Persian religion Zoroastrianism, dragons are also symbols of evil there as well. And in Semitic, Middle Eastern, and Arabic folklore and tradition, dragons are the chaotic force of nature, to be slain and conquered by the order of civilization, as they guard the water, the resource of life in nature, to be taken for better use, to create order and civilization. From the great chaotic dragon Tiamat of Mesopotamian mythology being killed to make the world, after having risen from the primordial waters of the sea, to the water dragons of Arabic folklore being slain to get access to the water. Even in the Bible, you have God killing the Leviathan, a dragon of the sea. Also, fire and water are strong natural elements, which are associated in a lot of dragon myths. And so are the earth and the sky, with dragons turning to stone, or dragons flying in the sky. And dragons are nature in a way. And just like nature, they are awe-inspiring, chaotic, dangerous, and threatening, but can ultimately be defeated by the powers of civilization and good when they are not good themselves. And dragon myths probably originate from this conflict with nature, this conflict with primordial nature being represented either in chaos or in evil, or in the case of the Chinese dragons and their life-bringing aspects, in the positive aspects of nature, and dragons being seen as a source of the good things in nature. So in their case, less of a negative relationship and more of a positive relationship. But it's still our relationship to nature that is in focus here, and probably birthed a lot of myths about dragons. So you have three sources of dragon myths. Ancient fossils that were interpreted as being dragon bones or the like. You have the fear of various animals that are represented in dragons, with dragons having traits of these animals, together with the fear of natural elements such as fire, lightning or water. And you have our relationship to nature. And all of these sources of dragon myths probably interacted with each other to give rise to the myths about dragons all over the world. So these are the origins of dragon myths that I believe are behind dragons existing. And I hope you found this video interesting and to your liking. Please ask questions and comment in the comment section, and I will reply to you as quickly as possible.
Please do subscribe, as it would help the channel spread awareness about the humanities.
اشتركوا بالقناة المفضلة.